So welcome everybody to the first Thursday meeting of the NASA Alumni League. It's December 1st, 2022. We made it to the end of the year almost. I'm Stokes McMillan. And today our speaker is going to be Francesco Fusco, who's president of the United Space School. And again, we'll be video recording this, so everybody on Zoom, please keep your mics muted, and we'll try and we'll put the recording on the website within a few days on the NOW website. So Francesco is originally from Amalfi, Italy, which is just a beautiful place in the world. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
It's stunningly beautiful. And he's a rocket propulsion engineer with significant experience in the international space and aeronautics programs. So after completing an internship at NASA JSC, Mr. Fusco joined the Alenia flight test group, and he supported the Eurofighter flight test activities as propulsion, avionics, and weapons systems specialist. Now, during the space shuttle return to flight era, he joined Boeing as the responsible engineer for the RCS. And he was the test conductor for the CST-100 Boeing Starliner service module hot fire testing. And he is part of the Boeing engineering support team for Artemis day of launch. Francesco is the executive director of the Foundation for International Space Education, which provides access and exposure of the space industry to students from around the world. And that's basically what he's going to be talking about today. The Foundation for International Space Exploration's mission is to promote STEM studies and international collaborations by providing space-based academic instruction in a collaborative environment to international pre-collegiate students while offering an introduction to the aerospace industry. So now I'm going to hand it over to Francesco Fusco, and give me just a few moments while I get his presentation up on my screen.
Thank you, Stokes. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here. Hey, my name is Francesco Fusco, and let's go straight to the presentation. I have very few charts here to talk about this United Space School project. Hopefully, it'll give you plenty of time for questions. So a little bit of the agenda, my background, so a little bit what I have a graphic version of my resume, basically. Then we do the FICE history, how this foundation was formed, FICE mission, what the foundation's purpose is, and then I'll give an overview of the United Space School, the operational structure, the activities that are part of the program, and some volunteer opportunities that we might have in our foundation, and some conclusion, and that will give you plenty of time for questions. So this is the graphical version of my resume. This is pretty much represent every major program I support throughout my career. A funny fact is that when I first arrived here in '99, I did my internship for my thesis back at Politecnico di Torino in Italy. And I started to work on clean thruster, the ignition transfer of the clean thruster for the space shuttle, the clean RCS. We're supposed to be working with ethanol. But when I came here, that program went under export control. Back then, I was not a U.S. person, so I could not work into that program anymore. So they switched me to the regular RCS thruster. They use hypergol, so MMH and NTO. So I learned great deal for that thing. Went back to Italy, graduated, started to work for the flight test for Eurofighter flight test, which is that little plane up there. When I joined the flight test, plane was already flying. So there was no much propulsion activities going on. There were some, but not enough. And I was like young and eager to work. So I keep asking for work. And so they started to say, well, we don't have much in propulsion, but I can start to give you avionics tasks. So I started to carry avionics tasks, ended up the focal point for Italy for Eurofighter on avionics. And when I joined and when return to flight happened here in Houston, a lot of opportunity open, as you are very aware of. I applied to Boeing, and actually Boeing hired me as an avionics person. So I started to support the space shuttle in DPS hardware. But when I joined the space shuttle, the avionics didn't have much going on during return to flight. Avionics was working pretty much fine. They canceled the cockpit upgrade that they were planning, but there were plenty of work in the propulsion group. So again, my willingness to want to work, keep asking for things, to say, why don't you take some tasks on the propulsion group? And from there, I became responsible engineer for the RCS thruster. So kind of the circle that closed when the three RCS thruster were the one that I studied to do my thesis. So I found that little luck, a little adventure, a little willingness to work. It got me all the way around the circle. And from there, I had a great experience working for Boeing on the space shuttle program, supported every flight from return to flight to the very end. In the meantime, we started to work for the Air Force. We worked on hydraulic and fuel system analysis and modeling for them. So when the shuttle ended, I already had a place to land. So that was pretty good. Supported KC-135, B-1, KC-46. We did some BCA work on the 777X. We did a lot of different things. But in the meantime, SLS was picking up, and we got assigned to the TVC, the thrust vector control, to do some analysis on the design. Ended up, as the stock was saying, into the engineer support team for the launch. So I'll be supporting Green Run, all the PSATs on the pad, and also the launch that we just had a couple of weeks ago. I was in KSC for that. They did call me out of the blue on Starliner 5 years ago for being a test conductor on the hot fire test. That's the first time you put all the system together in the desert in white sand. Was supposed to be a 6 months effort, ended up 2 years in the desert. So my wife was not very happy, but it was a great experience. It really was. We did a lot of work there, very valuable, lots of learning. And now I ended up early this year, they brought me back to Starliner. So I'm now actually in a propulsion group. Starliner, I led the design team for the OXISO investigation. And now I'm just closing up the federal investigation on 3 IFA, 3 flight anomalies that we had during OFT2. Anyway, enough about me. Why I'm doing all this in my career, which is the reason why I'm here in the United States. I was introduced to what was before called the International Space Crew Foundation. That started in '95. And I'm going to say why. So we consider FICE the continuation of that foundation. That foundation was funded by Geoff and Annette Mules. I don't know if any of you knows Geoff. I know some of the audience know him. He was working actually at NASA in the security office, for my memory doesn't fail me. Anyway, they're amazing. Both of them. Annette, unfortunately, is no longer for us. No, she passed about a year ago. But they started to bring students from Wales. They're from Wales, so they started to bring students from Wales. George Abbey, of course, was involved in all this, and he started saying, we should bring students from other country. And of course, Jean-Luc Chrétien, the astronaut, started to bring students from France. And little by little, everyone started to say, yeah, we want to get those students here. So kind of high school, give them the opportunity to see how the space sector is, get some enthusiasm on working on space and technological field. And the idea was great. And of course, students from all over wanted to come. I was introduced when I moved here in 2003, and they asked me to bring Italy into the program. So I became country manager for Italy, and I started to bring students from Italy. In 2007, though, Geoff and Annette had some personal things to take care of it. They couldn't support the work for the foundation anymore. And but they couldn't just hand off the foundation because they had some personal stuff tied to it. So everyone that was involved in the program decided to, continue the work. And it was important not to create gaps. Those programs, once you let it go for a year, it's very hard to restart. You lose funding, you lose that inertia that is creating, like selecting the students, approve the students, get the students over here, do the classes. If you lose that, it's really, really hard to restart. So we really work hard to not miss that first year. And that was a kind of a mixed bag. We used still the old foundation to work it out. And till the 2008, we actually got approved as a 501 Chapter 3 nonprofit. And we've been, getting the foundation since 2008 up and running to the present. Of course, through the years, they're not in specific order right here. More countries, more students. We were able to grow. Those are most of those countries, actually, they have like a fixed participation, some might not, but we'll keep growing. And we had to stop a little while. In fact, in 2020, of course, COVID hit. We couldn't get the students here. So we decided to create a virtual platform, and we call it Global Space School. We put a lot of effort in that because the concept is that with the virtual platform, you don't have the physical, the in-person experience is completely different. It's much more valuable. But the great things about virtual, you can reach a lot more students. You can reach even country which is very difficult to travel. And the problem with that is that being international, the way it is, we're dealing with like 13, 14 different time zones. And it makes it really, really hard. So it really took a lot of thought and processes to get that program to work. But again, it was a great success. The idea was to start to roll it out in parallel with USS. Right now, we're kind of short of stuff. We had a lot of board members that moved out of town, and some had to resign for personal reasons. So we're in the process of rebuilding the board and rebuilding the support internally. So we put it on pause, like the other programs that also the foundation run. And we're still concentrating on USS because that's our signature one. We don't want that to be affected by the short of help, but eventually we'll bring back those into the mix. Next, the mission of the foundation, definitely the first to promote STEAM study. It's not STEM anymore. We do have arts as well. Through the program, we encourage a lot of performance and music and dance and drawings, painting. So we do promote arts as well. One of the co-chair now is Chris Stott. His wife, Nicole Stott, is big into the program. She was, in fact, when they were living here, she was always coming on, and she'd been our keynote speaker at the graduation ceremony several times, signing a certificate. She's a big supporter. I don't know if you follow her, but she's really into arts and space and doing those kind of things. So we do support that. I think it's important. Promote international collaboration. That's definitely another key point that the foundation wants to do. It's our vision how to go to space. We need to collaborate. You have to pull resources together. If we want to continue space exploration, that's the only way to go. Of course, we offer an introduction to the aerospace industry, and that point is very important. Here, people doesn't realize we do have, of course, local students as well that apply to this school. They don't get it as much as the others because here you breed aerospace, like especially in the Clear Lake area, everyone is exposed. Lots of folks have, astronauts as neighbor, but the rest of the world, they have no idea. It's very hard for them to get into the aerospace industry. It's a small, kind of protective environment, and it's very hard to come from outside. So we are there to give them a door to at least peek in, and then we support them through their career. If a lot of them came back after graduating, and we help them, with the giving information, how to apply, who to apply. And so it's very, very. The other thing is to offer that opportunity to like low income class where students will never be exposed to like high those type of concepts. And we started locally a few years back. We are going internationally. Like we had a big program in Ethiopia a couple of years back. It was amazing. We received like thousands of applications. So we try to do those things again. A lot of those things are very dear to me, especially reaching the low-income country, low-income areas, even in the United States. We need the manpower, which currently we don't have. So I have to hold on all those things, but eventually those are part of the foundation intent. And finally, provide an introduction to American culture. Even for me, as you can tell from my Texas accent, right? Coming from Italy, I had a completely different concept of the American people. The perception is very different. First, I think outside, they don't realize how different is people to different parts in the United States. And then a lot of stereotype, I found the same for the Italian. A lot of people have a lot of stereotypes for Italian. So coming here, you have a different prospect. You understand better the culture, the real culture, the real people. And I think it's important for us also to share that with the other countries. And those pictures, some of the years of the group, you'll see different color shirt. I'm going to talk with that in a second here. But if you do an overview, the way that USS works is a long process. We already started, of course, for 2023. Mentor selection, that's the first part. We divided them in 5 teams. I'm going to go through detail. Next slide. Each team has a mentor. The mentor is supposed to be an alumni or a teacher, but mostly we give preference to alumni. Alumni is the students already went through the school and now went to college, finishes college, some already working, and they come back and they lead the team so they know what it's about and they know how to the best for the student itself. It is an amazing volunteer experience. To me, that is the realizing that the program really works. Those guys, they come back years after the program. They're now having to take vacation and they probably just started to work. So it's, it's hard to get vacation right off the bat. They pay their own travel. We only give them a place to stay and cover for their meal and their expenses while they're here. But it's expensive for them. And when they're here, they work 3 weeks really, really hard. You think, who's going to do that? We have dozens of applications every year. That's for me is like telling me, yeah, the program works. They want to come back to give back to the program. And that's their things. Like, I feel like I benefit so much for this program, I want to give back. And to me, that's the clarification for me that we're doing good job. Student selection. Now, this is very complicated. First of all, everybody can apply. We have a large process that we do the selection ourselves here. Of course, since around the world, they have to submit the application package, and then we do Zoom interview. We do video call to do interview. If they're local, we do in person. But we have, of course, each country with the years, we hand off to them the selection. And each country is different. Some are just school level, and some are wider, like government level, or even just a committee that were established. For example, in India, the program was first set up by the astronaut Kalpana Chawla, and she, of course, picked her school in Karnal when we started. Now, one of the students from Karnal came back as a mentor, and Sunita Williams also wanted to bring students from India. So this mentor said, why don't we start a committee in India so many schools can apply, and we do a pre-selection. So that's what they do for us. So there's many schools that apply to them because we cannot possibly deal with all the selection in all the country. We have like 25 to 29 different countries at the moment that applies. And so you can't really, so we outsource that. So what they do, they down select it to 3 to 5 names, and then we do the selection on those 5 for 2 spots. And so, but again, every country, it's a little different. We try to manage the differences, but we try to outsource some of the work. Some are funded by the government, some are funded by the school, some are funded by private institutes. Some, the students pay themselves for the fee. And that's one of the reasons why we keep those fees incredibly low, because we don't want to be the factor of those students not to come. And in fact, when a student is selected that they don't have financial means, we also help them out. We're doing fundraising and things for them specifically. Assignments. So the student selection will be finalized at the end of February. In March, we start to send assignments. The assignments are not much to grade them, although we do, but is to force them to learn the concept that they need for their mission here. When they come here, it's only 2 weeks. There's not enough time to get them to do the amount of things we want them to do if they don't have any tool already. So we go through the 5 challenges, one for each team. And basically by doing the assignments, they acquire the concepts necessary to do the work when they come here. So they're very important. We spend a lot of time to tweak them every year to make sure they got all the information up to date and what they will be using for their project. Then they travel to Houston, and we assign them a host family. Host families, incredibly important. That's not just the way the only way to keep that cost down, right? Because otherwise it would have been tremendously more expensive. But it gives another opportunity. First, it satisfies one of our key points, right? American culture, that's the best way to learn about it. You enter in someone's home that lives here and tells you all about this state, gets you part of their family. But we realized that by having a family away from home, the impact, it's really beneficial for the students. They feel involved, they feel protected, and it's just a completely different than just going to a hotel, right? So that's very important for us. And it is really mutual beneficial for the host families and the students. Students from those countries brings, a lot of novelties and a lot of energy. And we got the host family involved in a lot of the activities that we do. So it is fun for them as well. Opening lunch, that's the first time when all the students got together. We get them connected before with a Facebook group, so they don't come completely, so they start to know about each other. But the first time they probably see them is there. That's the point where it's like, okay, we're about to start. You need to hit the ground and run, because there's a lot of things. This program is packed, and we want you to go through everything. So right after the opening lunch, we go to UHCL and they do their interviews. We keep it very formal. We have a panel for each team, the mentor seat in each team. We pre-assign the students to interview with a specific panel based on their selection for the team they want to be in, but also on the assignments. How did they score? What challenge they're more prone to it? That's how they got assigned to the different team. That's a key point of the program. You want to build those teams in a very specific way. You don't have to have too many leaders. You can have just followers. You need to have a good mix of English native speakers versus not English native speaker. A good mix of male versus female. And there's a lot of things that you need to look at it to make sure that then those teams are successful. And I think we got it down to a point where the process is so evolved right now that it just flows naturally now to build those teams in a proper way. That's team formation. Then we start with a lot of team building activities. There are schools, so the didactic thing, but they're also social. And we have to build two groups. So the team itself, we want them to be very good within the team, but also the bigger group, they also need to be together. In fact, it's with teenagers always like they're going to compete. Those teams is going to compete, but it's not a competition. They work the same mission. So we have to remind them that if any one of them fail, they're all going to fail, right? So, but it's something that you have to work. And we found out that activities help you tremendously. Like one of the activities, the first days that we do, it's a soccer game. So all the students play against the NASA League team. And again, that get them together like the bigger group fighting against the NASA, we call it all-star NASA team. It's a fun. Again, every single thing with the years has been tweaked to almost to perfection. But we continue. There's no perfection. So we keep aiming. Mission parameters. So when they finally have the team assigned, there are certain mission parameters they have to decide. So USS, we're talking this year to switch to the moon, since now that's the focus where NASA is going. But up to now, it's been Mars. So there's several things that need to be decided, right? What type of mission you want? Is compensation, is exploration? What type of vehicle you want to use? It's going to be a LEO to Mars. It's going to be direct mission. How many astronauts you're going to bring? What on Mars? All those things we categorize on different mission parameters that then will decide what the mission, when they want to go, how long they want to stay. That's another important one. But they have all to agree to those mission parameters, and then they work towards achieving those. Once they got there, each team is going to have their own proposal. Of course, all this is done in university with speakers that helps them through, and tours, field trip, of course, focus to show them things that they're helping them in their research. We do a tiger team when they get the first draft of the proposal to make sure they don't have holes. We know they don't. It's somehow limited what they can do in 2 weeks, but you'll be surprised the amount of work that they put in. And we want to make sure that they have a solid story. So we go there and question the way that they did it, and if there's all we underline and they have to fix it. That's when they finally come with a final presentation, which is amazing. Again, we do a college style. We have a panel, which is a technical committee that sits up front. They have to present their slides, and then we have a thorough question to them. They have to answer technical questions, sometimes very hard. And then it finished with them doing a song, which ended up also a dance, which it makes everything a conclusion. So after that work and the stress by answering this question with all those NASA engineer, then the relaxation and the joy comes back. It just works beautifully. I invite all of you to be in one of those presentations in July. So if you have time, I'm willing. It's at UHCL. I think you're going to find information on the website. And then there's graduation. Again, formal graduation at UHCL. We have a keynote speaker, typically is an astronaut. We found that very effective. We end up certificate, taking picture, with a nice dinner. They all have to come and dress formally. It's working out. So really good. And if we go more into detail, so you understand the level that we're trying to go to with the students. We divided them in 5 teams for a mission to Mars. There were 4, and we decided to go 5 when growing the number of students. We realized that when you get 12 in a team, it starts to be too much. Like 12 is kind of a limit. More than 12 is too confusing. It's too hard to keep a team for this experience working proficiently. So when we passed the 48 students per year mark, we decided to add the team. And that worked out pretty well because before it was the red team only doing all the transportation. And that's a lot of work. So now we divided in 2. So you will have the Mars red team destination that it's in charge of the transfer vehicle. So if they decided to go Mars direct, it's going to be from Earth to Mars orbit. If they do from Leo, it's going to be from Leo to Mars orbit. But then we added the maroon team that does the operational logistics. So they are in charge of going from Mars orbit to Mars and all the logistics associated with that. And back, of course, to the transfer vehicle if they are there to stay forever, right? So we want them to come back. And so they also have to be in charge of the fuel storage on Mars. And so they know they can go back to their spacecraft and search. Then we have 3 additional ones. The yellow team, that's mission control. So of course, they have to build mission control. But not only that, they all do communication strings. So satellites, how they're going to communicate with the astronauts, how they deal with the delay to go to Mars when they are not inside and things like that. And also they are in charge of the budget. So they're the one that have to come up with how they're going to make the program sustainable, where they're getting the fund, what are the nations that are involved, and also they're in charge of space law. It's going to be a big thing soon, especially if we started to go and mining asteroids. Space law is going to come in place. I mean, how are we going to manage that? It's going to be interesting. And again, the idea that come up on that team is just mind-blowing. Blue team, they're Mars exploration. They're the one that when we get to Mars, what are we going to do here? What science we're going to do? Typically, geology, analysis of soil, search for water. So they're in charge of the rover and the spacesuits, but also all the activity, all the mission they're going to do outside their habitat. And then the green team, they build the habitats on Mars. So they're in charge of everything, of the aspect of the orbits, but also of the crew selection, medical, and diets. So food and also storage. So they are in charge of also the logistics inside the module. And those 5 different groups, it really attract different type of people. And it's amazing to, when you start to look at numbers. Now, I'll be doing this for a long time. And if you see their assignments and how they scored better and how they ended up choosing a specific team, they pretty much match to 70–80%. It is amazing. When you run the number, you're blown away at how well it works. Because you have like the medical type, the not too much scientific type that tends to go to the green team or the blue team, right? And then the type of more the geologic type that loves, the volcanic, that this kind of goes to the blue team. And then the rocket type of person, they want like calculation, like maths, like physics and like chemistry, usually go to the red or maroon team. And then, the budget, the guys that there's more in financial, organization, and law goes to the yellow team. So we got to cover with those 5 things. I think I talked pretty much about those key points here. We stress the fact they are ambassador of their own country. We want them to represent their country. So they need to be respectful of every other culture, but they need to be proud of theirs at the same time. And that's what, again, the program is aimed to do. I'm going to go through the activities. I think I talked most of those. So I'm going to go through the activities quickly. So I think that the time it's. So this chart is very busy, is intended to be. How busy is the program, right? So those are some of the activities, at least the major one that we do. And everything is geared to those points that I said. Everything. Of course, we went through some of the didactic work. We do the classes at UHCL. We took them to the Jones Space. The Brazos Bend Observatory, like last year, we haven't gone. They had a lot of damage with the flooding, and it's kind of hard. And the mission expedition, we used to be at Brazos Bend, and now it's at Museum of Natural Science. It actually is bigger, so it works better for our larger group. So we were going to the Georgia Observatory for the star party, so to do observation and star and planets. But now we have one of the host families, an astronomer. He organized this event for us at his place, and he has like 5–6 different big telescopes. So it's a fantastic. So we're changing a little in there. Target team, we said, a project place, we said, but it's social. So what are those activities like for sharing your culture? We do a talent night. So they have to go up on stage and perform. And, that's pretty much cool. Like you go to a dinner, they have relax and everything. We have a stage set up and then, come on, let's go. Can you sing? Can you dance? So that night, you see them shy, you see like building up, but that's a prelude to the culture fair. The culture fair is a big event we do on all day. Each student has to cook a meal from their country, typical of their country, and they have to perform a song, a dance, an act specifically of their country and it is an amazing event. A lot of food, you have like 59 dishes that everybody got to try. And then, of course, it's fun. Those students typically have fun. At that point, because we broke the ice with the talent night, that shyness, so now it's kind of gone away. They fully performed for the audience. So it's kind of entertaining as well. We get them to dance. We get them to do a lot of things. One thing we do also an external event. We found that very effective. Get them out there, participate to a major event. Typically, we have a deal with the Dynamo, so we take them to a soccer game. Watching soccer here, MLS, is not great for people from Europe and from South America. I have to be honest with you, sometimes like, what's going on? But the event is what is important. We took them down on the field. They carry the flag. All the students carrying the flag of the stadium in front of a crowd in the stadium. It's very powerful for them. They made them feel part of something. This year, actually, it's 2022. For the first time, no Dynamo game, not even Dutch game, through the 2 weeks of the program. It never happened before. But there was a concert in Galveston of Bandella, Chris Hadfield. So I know Chris really well. So we took them there. And of course, because after the concert, all the astronauts gather around the students because they've been supporting. Chris has been supporting the program when he was living here a lot too. So, but that external event is also important, like a formal event, and they're part there and they're part of the event somehow. So that's that we found that being very effective. And like movie nights, again, we get them to talk about, maybe we pick a movie that like The Martian or Apollo 13, something, of course, related, and then they have them to have a discussion on the content, and you have the expert that guide them those discussions and tell them what the movie did right, what the movie did not so right, or et cetera, et cetera. Game, that's an excuse so they can stay longer at the university to work more on their project. And then say, oh, today we stay there, and then everything is done with maximize their effort. But again, a lot of things. The top picture, that's at Astra with Chang Diaz showing his plasma thruster. Like this is a cake that they got the cake every year for the graduation cake. It's a big cake with them. So everything is done to maximize that. Lots of volunteer opportunities in our foundation. We have a board of directors. There's the one that basically meet all year around to organize this. It's the most, of course, involvement you can get with the foundation. There's a lot of aspect of the foundation, not just the school, that needs to be taken care of, and we'll try to deal with that. But we have a technical committee. Those are in charge just for the technical contents. Of course, they're the one that make sure the assignments are done correctly, and they help the mentors to learn how to grade them and how to deal with that. And they answer any technical question. They're the one also doing the Tiger team during the school and the panel at the presentation. We have a logistic committee. The logistic committee mostly organize the host families and any things that needs to be present, any tools that needs to be here. During the school, of course, they're in charge of getting the meals and waters and things like that. Of course, host families, as I mentioned before, is a great opportunity. It's 2 weeks and 2 days of somebody's time, but it's very rewarding. During the year, we try to do events, like one or two events, just like a social event for the host family, just to keep them in the loop with us. And we do have in April a orientation class for new host families. Orientation class, again, there's no commitments. I invite any of you that might have an interest in there to come. There's no commitment, but you can come and you hear what this is about in details. At that point, we already know the class that is coming, so we also presented all the students that's going to come through, and what are all the duties. Most of the host family, the hardest thing is the drive, right? You have to drive them in the morning to drop them at school and go to pick them up. And then, yes, it's 2 weeks. It's going to go fast, but we found that again, 1 week is too short. More than 2 weeks would be too much to ask. So it is, again, 2 weeks is the right period of time. Before, we used to have very few host family nights, for example, which is when we don't have activities. The host family does whatever they want. They can get together with our host families or do the things they've been saying. Sometimes we do this. And so they take the student to do an experience, what they typically do. Host families ask for more of those nights because they thought that's not enough time to show them what I want to show them. And so now I think we have like 5 host family nights for the entire 2 weeks and a few days, because the students arrive on Sunday or Saturday. If they're coming from New Zealand, Australia, it's a long trip, we allow them to come a day earlier. So they may arrive here on Saturday, on Sunday, and then they leave the Monday following 2 weeks. So it's 2 weeks and 2 days. And then speakers, of course. Speakers, it's only during the school. It's typically a session of 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. We tend to do a very good selection to be pertinent with what they do. Try to keep the presentation short because typically they have tons of questions. And so, people is running out of time quickly. And this is a conclusion. So we've been running this for 27 years, over 1,200 alumni right now in 32 different countries. I'll keep running in those students. I mean, I was at a summit at Rice University, and I was in a panel for education, and I'm talking about, and there's a panel after mine, and this guy stood up and said, before we start our panel, I just want to say something in the panel before. And I was like, I did that school, and that's why I'm here. Everybody like it was like the perfect. But so it is amazing what those students accomplish and how they wanna give back. Of course, we will not be possible without UHCL, great partner. You know, again, I think it's mutual. Giving them a program, they don't do much, but for us, it's huge because they give us classrooms, they give us the space to do it, and the protection that we need in terms of classes. The dean has been very, very good for us. Actually, we saw like 3 deans through the course of these years, and they're all been very, very supportive of this program. A few years back, they even offer some special admission to alumni from the school if they apply to HCCL. In fact, some of the students did. I had one from Italy that came for a class at UHCL, for example, that participated in the school. And of course, the greater community, Houston, Galaxy. Okay, always look for improvement. And I'm going to leave you with a 30-second video before any question you might have that, again, a student did, which became a mentor, actually. And they give you like, that's what the students think more than us. Thank you. Any question?
I have an observation, but first, I'm wearing a shirt that says Space Center Houston. I'm not taking part in. I'm just a volunteer. So this is my observation. But are you familiar with the Space Center Houston?
Oh yeah, very.
And that they have a week class of. I'm just providing information in case you're not familiar with that. It could be competitive. It could be cooperative. They do run a class. Kids come in for a week, they do things later, teaching them about space, then they get to see the museum. And most of those groups come in from Europe and South America, not from the US. So,
Hey, Stokes,
No, I'm very, very familiar. Actually, yeah.
can you get whoever's speaking up to the microphone or repeat the questions? It's not coming through at all for the video.
On this, yeah. So the question was, there's a Space Center Houston also runs some similar activities. Students come from different countries and participate to a program at Space Center Houston. And if I was aware of it, and I am, actually and I don't want to sound like, but
let me say yours is much more expensive.
It is, and actually we had them kind of getting inspired a lot from our program. We started 27 years ago, as I mentioned. They do it differently. We have several meetings with them to try to find a way to cooperate. And actually, I have a huge network which they were interested into, and I was okay to get in tapping. For me, I don't do this for anything. I'm a volunteer. I'm not here for money. If somebody else wants to do the same program, I give them all the tools I can because I want them to do it. I want to reach as many kids as I can. So if another organization want to do it, I'll help them. And so that's what we try to do. We try to establish, the time was Brown. I don't know if you know him. I think he retired recently, but he was in the program for a long time. So we started to work with them. It never really picked up, but I have a lot of contacts that they've been going to them, like our Colombia contact ended up being a big part of their teacher organization. She does things for them. So we are kind of exchanging. I did go a couple of times, talk like with people from Nigeria that they have there. We don't have Nigeria in our program. So we try to make it formal, something that we could have done. It never really worked out. So
Again, I just want to pass on the information.
no, we have them in the past asking to come and look at the presentations that we were doing. So it's we're mutually aware of our organization, and we are not. If we can, we help each other. There's no competition.
Which other group or program is that?
You remember that Norm Chappie ran this space settlement. Are we
I can't hear on the line. Get up closer to the mic.
Yeah, it's a little bit of conversation right now. We'll get to more questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, which program was that that you were talking about?
Have anything on how many have actually gone into STEM once they've gone into college and they've actually graduated in the STEM field?
Yeah, so the question is that we had about 1,200 graduates, and if you have any data about how many they went to STEM, and yes, I don't have the number precise, but it's around 70-80% that went to STEM. You have to think those are students that already come somehow predisposed, although not all are. But we do have students that clearly say, I was thinking to do something completely different before I came to the United States, and then I'm fully committed to stay in aerospace or the greater technology fields.
What level of students or ages are these?
So it's high school students. We like them to come before their last year. So the year before last, because last year they're involved with their finals and things like that. And also we want them to go back to the high school where they come from and bring their experience to the other students that didn't get to come. And that's different from country to country. So mostly are between 15 and 17 years old. Like in Italy, we have 5 years high school instead of 4. So they tend to come like a year older from Italy. But it's open also for the third year, but typically they tend to be the last year or the year before last. Many schools actually, they do have program when they return to share their experience with other students. And that's what we really aim for it, because I can only reach a small number. And so if it trickles down to the rest of the class, is very important to us.
What's the ratio of American and foreign students?
That's a good question. So in
The
the past,
ratio.
oh, sorry. The question was, what's the ratio of Americans versus other country? So we do have a 2-spot assigned for American, like any other country, pre-assigned, like, and it's so everyone gets to have 2. But then because there's the large process, a lot of folks can apply, and then you don't control where they come from. In the past, we did have conversation to have a cap, because we were starting to have a lot of, like, the host families, they have kids too. And the kids, of course, get exposed to this program, and then they want to participate. And some years happened that we had like 6-7 host family kids applying, and we're like, I love these guys that want to apply, but I can't have an international program. We like 10, and so the ratio would be 1 to 5 to American students. So you can apply this year, you can apply next year. So we tend to have no more than 10% from a specific nation. So typically, of course, United States is the one that will come the most. That's what the target is, no more than 10%. So 5 students.
Oh, I thought you said 2 per country.
5, 6. Well, 2 per countries are the assigned. So we assign the spot, like Argentina has 2 spots. So it's like the student. The other students from Argentina they want to apply that doesn't go into those schools. They apply to our large process. If they pass, now I have 3 students from Argentina. Because I do have about 10, 15 spots that we decided in the large process. And so those are, whoever passed our selection in Houston takes those spots.
So from Argentina, they learn English.
English is one of the requirements. They need to have English. Tell you a fun story. When Joffen and I started, they didn't think that was a big of a requirement. Like say, we don't want to force someone if they don't know English, we'll figure out a way. It makes the program really hard because first you slow down everyone. You're not you can't communicate well. The speakers, you know, how are you going to translate what the speakers say? It gets very complicated. So we made it as a requirement with FIES that you have to have a good level of English. We're not going to grade them on their English, but you know, they need to have a level for understanding and express themselves.
How do you verify that before they get here?
Oh, we interview them.
Oh, you meet them first.
Video,
Video,
yes, video interview. And English is one of the criteria that we grade to get them to pass.
How do these people find out about this opportunity, like in different schools in different countries? I mean, how does it even present to the possibility?
Yeah, so each one might be different.
The question is.
Oh, sorry. Question was that how the students in different countries get to know how to apply. So typically, schools and organizations that they run the selections, they have their distribution list. School poster organization at their websites. I mean, and the word goes around fairly quick. In fact, we never really felt the need of publicizing the school because actually we always are in that horrible situation where we have to decline a lot of those applications because very limited spots. But word of mouth is definitely huge. I mean, a lot more than what you can think. I have Kazakhstan. One guy came in one time, and now it's basically I'm having 50, 60 application every year from Kazakhstan that I don't know how to manage because I have to interview 50, 60 was too much. So now, for example, the large package, we're clearly stating that you need to write. It's mostly an essay. You have to submit an essay with key points that change every year, and your resume and a letter of recommendation. But we stress the essay needs to be something personal. So don't go on the internet and copy a bunch of stuff because then we're not interested. We're interested in your ideas. Bring something new to the table, make it personal, make you stand out from the others. Because otherwise, we don't even interview them because we don't have the power to do that. And that's another thing that now it's getting better and better. The essay they submitted are becoming better and better with the years.
Do you think those essays are written by them themselves, or do you think they get somebody help write it for them? How do you?
I mean, it's honor code. We do run it for we do run the essay for plagiarism. Yeah, we have a tool. We have a software tool that does that for us. But honestly, it takes with the experience that we got. It takes me 2 questions on the interview to know if they wrote it or they're not.
Right. Yeah.
2 questions.
Right.
It's clear. And typically for us, that's done. I mean, if in the interview, we clearly understand that the student did not write the essay, he's out. Again, we have plenty, so we're not gonna try to give them a second opportunity. We don't have the chance to do that. Sometimes I wish we could, but we don't. So, but it's clearly stated what it's about. You have to do it. It has to be you personal. No plagiarism is allowed, and so if they feel that, that's failed.
So obviously, another requirement is they have a valid passport to travel.
Absolutely, yeah. And not only that, lately it's becoming very complicated for the appointment for the visa, because many countries require a visa. I mean, some they have the STA, that's easy to obtain, but some countries they actually have to book an appointment at the embassy. And with the COVID, everything, I don't know if any of you does travel international, everything gets a lot more complicated recently. And so sometimes they have like 4 or 5 months for the appointment. I have to say though, some of the country, the first appointment they had was past the travel. They asked us to write a letter to the embassy, and the embassy moved the appointment in time for them to make the school. So there are some response from the embassies as well. But yeah, that's a good question.
How many host families do you require? And do you have trouble getting?
So the question is, how many host families the program require? So host families also determine the number of students we're going to get here. For example, we had a tremendous blow for COVID. So when we restarted this past year for US 2022, we had several families that were not feeling safe to host someone from another country, still concerned about COVID. And of course, in those 2 years, some moved away. We really want the family to stay in this area, right? Not too far from the school. Otherwise, it makes it really hard. Makes it really hard to drive, makes it really hard. Sometimes they have 2 hours break, 3 hours break, and they have to return to school for the night activities. There's no point if you live in town to do it. Like I live in Pearland myself, but the far side on the west side of Pearland, west of 28, I hosted, but I'm usually on the backup list of the host. Because to me, when they have 2 hours, I don't make it back home. And so I make it to go back home. They're like 20 minutes and I have to drive them back. So the result is that I don't go back. And I'm the last one to leave and the first one to go there. So when I was students, for the students, it's really hard. So we like to be in the area. But as I said, this year was very challenged. So we had to limit the number of at-large because that's the number that I can play with. Like how many at-large I can accept, that's based on the number of host family. And this year we know we didn't have enough, so we cut the number a little down. So we need more. Typically, we like to have at least 20, 25 families. The idea is we assign 2 students for each family. It's always better to have not just 1 student, so they support each other, the students support each other. Of course, there's going to be same sex, so 2 males or 2 females, just to make it easier. Also in the room, not everybody has 2 different rooms, but you know they can share the room, no problem. But yeah, the idea is to have those host family. And typically, when an host family join the program, now COVID's apart, they don't leave. I have host family that did this for 20 years. Some of them now are board members. It's so full experience. So the only reason why I lose an host family is because they move away. They move to a different part of town or they move out of town. Or now for the COVID, some were still not safe to host. But yeah, so that's something that we keep looking. And as I said, when we get into February is where we like to have at least the potential candidates, because that's when I have to decide how many at-large I can take. I know it's probably a way longer answer than you would expect.
When does the process begin, a new class?
It's already begun for 2023. I sent the announcement letter beginning of October to all those schools and institutions that support the program around the world. So they have the dates. We decided dates with UHCL. We booked the classes. And then from there, they started on their own end to gather the students. And we started, now we are in the process of doing the assignments, to build the assignments. And come January, we have to do the mentor selection first. And then in February, we start all those interviews. So February is very busy, most of the weekends. My wife, again, not happy in those weekends because I disappear for hours at a time. But yeah, we run all those interviews. We first have to review all the application packages. And then and that's the technical committee helps with that. And then we actually go and do the interview. And we typically want to have pretty good panel. I usually want to have at least 5 person to the interview because, it's very easily to get biased. You see someone that maybe is wearing something you don't like, and you've done already 7 interviews and somehow you're something that makes you don't like that person. It happens. I know it happens. It happens to everyone. And so if you have only 1 or 2 person, that bias is going to be in the gray. When you have at least 5, it's been filtered out, right? So we like that. So, but it gets very intense. Get 5 people for all those interviews every time. A lot of organization and management. So
How do you integrate your job here or your volunteer work with your prime work at Boeing?
but the question is that how do I couple this volunteer work with the work at Boeing? Today I got almost a free pass. In fact, I was in a meeting when I worked here, if you heard it. And I have my boss do the status for me because I know I was not going to make it today. It's challenging, and hopefully I have to do things at night. Like when the kids go to bed, if my wife falls asleep and I'm still have some energy, I go and do some work for the foundation. It is what it is. But yeah, it takes time. Again, the good things about volunteer for the foundation is my position is different. In fact, I'm trying to find my substitute because I've been running this now for almost 10 years. And I think if I will step down and continue to support the organization in a different position, because as a director, there's a lot of things. Lately has been really hard because I had Treasurer resigned 2 years ago, asked me to resign. I found a replacement. And then the replacement had personal issues. Very sorry for what happened to him. So I ended up, because, and so I'm doing the treasurer. So I've been doing the treasurer for USS for the entire school. Hate that, and definitely I need to find someone to run the treasurer before tax, before April, because I'm not going to do the tax return for the foundation. They told me it's easy. Let's try the tax treasurer. Oh, that's easy. Yeah, that's easy for you. I don't like that part. But so I'm covering for treasurer. I'm covering lady from secretary because our secretary moved away, and she said she was going to support. So I have to write the minutes. I have to do it. So it becomes as to cover the missing positions. What is really making my job a little harder. But otherwise, you pick your level of, what can you give, how much time you have, and you be able to find your spot in the foundation.
So do these kids become rock stars when they go back to their home country?
Some they do. If you Google it, you'll see plenty of articles on the internet regarding school and student being interviewed. I mean, the last one came from Kazakhstan. During her interview, she came up with an amazing concept of a asteroid mining facility, and she went into details, and it was and she drew the schematic and everything. So we ended up awarding her a scholarship, so she didn't have to pay the fee to come. And we know she had also some financial thing. So anyway, but she became like a big hero, of course, because it became she won a scholarship to go to the Houston for a space exploration project. And you see actually there was I think Houston Chronicle had an article on her too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going. Isle of Man is another one. It's a small country, so typically, and we have Chris Stoddard and Ron Mansad. He sponsored the student coming from Isle of Man, and again, they usually have a big coverage in newspaper when they come and they return and they present what they do. So I mean, they do. Depends on the country, I guess.
So where does your funding come from? I mean, this looks like an expensive endeavor. How are you funding this?
Yeah, question is about funding. Where did the funding come from? They're really all this volunteering. It really helps contain the cost tremendously. So we don't really need much, and we do get the tuition fee from the students that come. Again, we really like all to be funded, but this is not always the case. We aim to do that, but like for Italy, I lost hours and hours to try to get to, and sometimes I do the fund, but only for that year, and then you have to start all over again. I'm trying to find something more stable. I don't have to do that every time. It's sometimes the student self-pay, but with the tuition fee, we manage to. We do have some fundraising that we do through the year as well. We used to have some company that also was yearly providing some fund. None of them is doing right now. One, I was not involved yet, but I think Boeing in the past was also contributing. I'm glad it doesn't, because I will have a conflict with myself. But they can't, because now Boeing had these new things that can benefit only local association. And because, you know, like 80–90% of our students are not local, they won't be able to fund us. But again, I'm glad for that, because it made me to answer, to skip a lot of questions that I will have to answer. So that's good for me.
What is the cost per student?
The question is the cost per student. So the tuition fee that was set years ago, and we never changed it, is $1,000. However, returning school, and in some occasion, we do grant some discount. So typically the returning school that had trouble that is not funded, we drop it to $750. So that's the target that we have. If this, again, if the student is not funded and you know, it doesn't have the financial means, we tend to help them. And typically we do fundraising or waive the fee.
$1,000 covers the actual cost of the student.
That's all, and lots of volunteer work. Again, host families, that's why I stress a lot on host families. Host families made it possible, because it would have been impossible to offer for that program for 2 weeks, right? But host families, they volunteer, they basically give them a bed and about few meals. I mean, just a breakfast. We feed them a lunch. A lot of dinner are covered by the foundation. Actually, some also the host family are invited. Even the major event that I was talking, we provide the tickets to the host families that they want to join. Of course, sometimes the host family wants to have the free night, so they prefer not to come, but they always welcome to participate, and we cover the cost for that. And they have some dinners that the host family covers, you know, some meals that they do, but that's for a host family hosting two kids for 2 students is not a huge effort financially, right? For us, it's a huge saving for each of the students. And so that's how it makes this program work. Which, for example, is Space Center, they don't do that. And the price are through the roof. They're very expensive. And people cannot afford it. And so he ended up to have just a lot of rich kids that goes there. I have a conversation with them as well about that. But, yeah. It's a different approach. And again, they're all good. I'm not, but we are trying to do something different. And it definitely is not for profit. We reach as best we can, and actually try to reach the students that don't have financial needs, because they give them an opportunity that will never be able to have.
The kids that come, when you're going to host them, you have a choice in what country they come from, or you just take whatever's assigned to you?
Yeah, question is that if you, as a host family, you can choose the students from what country they come from. And answer is to a point. Orientation class, when we introduce the class, is actually the moment where if you're already a designated host family, you could potentially say, you know, I have ties, and we have this all the time. I have ties in Ireland. You know, my family came from Ireland. I want the student, if it's possible, I can have a student from Ireland. And of course, at that point, since the students are not assigned yet, we are very willing to do that. Keep in mind that typically a student, is not always, but the idea is to have 1 male, 1 female for each country. So typically you got to assign 1 from Ireland and then one from some other country. So it's not, they won't come from the both countries in your
And you have
household.
the same sex,
Yes.
the things you can't have one girl, one boy.
So far, we try to avoid that. There's also a, I know we're recording, but we have a very strict no space kids policy. Yeah, they're teenagers and they tend to, to go towards each other. So we make sure that that doesn't happen. Right? Everybody's friends here after the school, and you go back home and do whatever you want. But here, we keep it proper. We keep it in school. So having in your same household, you might start to run into additional issue that you don't want to deal with. But there is not set in stone. It's not a rule. So I guess if there's an opportunity and the family can provide, in that case, we'll probably would like to at least know that they have 2 separate rooms and things like that. It could have been done. Any other question?
I can have a little bit of an answer. I've been a host family for 2 years. And at the orientation meeting that you have early in the spring, they have videos, I believe, or no, not a slideshow showing pictures of each one of the students and what their interests are. So
Yep.
give you an idea if you might like to choose. Also, I think you like to pair an English native speaker and a non-English
Typically, if possible.
native speaker. And I feel like I have kids all over the world.
Yeah.
And my kids.
Yes, I don't know if the audience is listening to this, but there's actually in the audience, there's a host family. We call it host mom. And I was sharing a little bit their experience. And it's true, during the orientation class, as I said, we present the class because at that point the selection has been completed. And so at that point, we ask them to submit slides of themselves. So try to speak about yourself in one slide, right? Present yourself in one slide. And so you have a bit of information. And at that point, there's a chance, if there's preference, we tend to accommodate those preferences. And then she's right. We tend to at least put a non-English native speaker with an English native speaker so they can help each other. Actually, the English native speaker can help the other guy to communicate if there's any communication issues.
So for transgender, you accept?
We do.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no problem with that. We have no. Why would be a problem?
But you have to have 2 of them then?
We're not testing that. We make sure everybody's proper, no matter if it's interaction female or female male or male male. It's it's their life, it's their choice. I'm not worried about that.
Do you have any criteria to become a host family?
It's not necessarily a criteria. We definitely, okay. So here, of course, the audience, it's being ex-NASA, you guys are definitely our preference folks. We know that you've been having background check on you for many, many years. You have to look at those things, right? We have to make sure who they're going to host our kid. So in this case, would be preference. Typically, it's again word by mouth. We had an amazing, she met Chris, which is actually trying to step away too. But our director of logistics, she's the one that was in charge of this, and she was personally meeting all the family, knowing in church, knowing and those family that knows other families. So it was like try to get a good base of person. We cannot just go in the street and say, "Hey, can you host a kid?" Right? So we need so there's no specific criteria, but we look at certain situation and making sure that the host is solid. Sometimes we did in the past talk about having background check on the family ourselves. We haven't done that, but I don't, if we don't know the family, there might be some that we might ask if it's possible to do it just for peace of mind.
Now, what 2 weeks?
So typically is the last week of July, first week of August. This year is a little earlier because the United States school is moving earlier, and since our teacher are dealing with U.S. It's going to be last 2 weeks of July. So they'll be leaving on July 31st. So that Monday, July 31st, the students will be leaving, returning.
Do the parents ever come?
We don't recommend. The students are really involved, and you really don't. We had in the past some that they were getting their own hotel, some extra caution parents, but they were doing their activities, and sometimes they were coming to the general open event. So of course we can't prevent that from happening. But typically, we want the students to be hosted in a family like everybody else, to a point that when host family kids actually join the program, they want to be hosted by the family. They don't want to stay to their family. So it's like, because it's part of the experience, right? Going to another family and tie with another kids from another country. It's part of that experience, and everybody wants that.
Any more?
All right, I just want to reiterate, what's the exact dates you're talking about for this class coming up this year?
So this year is going to be last 2 weeks of July. So the students who arrive here Saturday or Sunday, mostly this Sunday, which is 15, 16. I might look at the calendar.
The last 2 weeks in July.
Last 2 weeks of July. And they leave on that Monday, 31st. Any other question? And I have some, of course, those have my contacts, but I have some cards. If anybody wants and is interested, they can email me at any time to have additional information. Feel free to reach out. And
I would recommend that when the orientation class, when you have a date for that, you should let me know, or anyone you know in here, and we can. Dan today can put it on our website. And so sound like some people here might be interested in going to that orientation class.
yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, usually it's April timeframe, April, May timeframe. This year, I'm sure I'm going to push April because earlier is better. It'll give us more time to find more of families if needed at that point. But yeah, we'll definitely can share that information.
Okay. Well, Francesco, this was outstanding. Thank you very much. Super interesting program. And boy, it sounds really worthwhile to get these kids involved. And boy, this has got to be one of the biggest events of their lives, especially if you're coming from like Kazakhstan. But thank you very much for giving us your time.
That's the most recurrent comment that they have. That's the most beautiful experience. And they, when they say that, then they're 16 years old, you think, okay, your life was not that long, and it's not that impressive. But actually, when they return as a mentor, and now they are like 30 years old, and they have plenty of experience, and they keep saying that was one of the best experiences of my life, you're like, okay, now. Now this is it's a lot more value. So. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave, so we can stop recording now. Everyone, thank you very much for